Hello, Congregation Beth Israel. My name is Mike Hollander. I actually grew up in Canada, in Vancouver to be precise, graduate of adjacent Talmud Torah, and I made Aliyah to Israel a little over 36 years ago. I live in Israel, I have family here, I'm a Torah educator. I want to talk to you briefly today about what's happening this Shabbat. Parshat B'Shalach, also known as Shabbat Shira, is just a week before Tu B'Shvat. And Tu B'Shvat, as you might know, is the holiday where we commemorate the New Year of the trees. And just yesterday, on my way up to Jerusalem, I noticed the abundance of beautiful almond trees, the shkediot, in full bloom, telling us, nature's way of telling us, that Tu B'Shvat is just around the corner. But it's this parsha that, to me, is one of the most compelling stories in the entire 54 parshiot of the Torah. We're leaving Egypt. We go in a roundabout way. Our ancestors complained, "What have you done to us?" We cried out to God. "Why have you taken us out of Egypt?" Things were actually pretty good for us, believe it or not, in Egypt. And it's a story of our people filled with fear and anxiety, uncertainty of the future, no question, a traumatized people. And as a traumatized people, asking ourselves, what have we been through and where are we going to? And of course, as the water doesn't yet part, according to rabbinic midrash, there's a man from the Israelites named Nachshon, the son of Avinadav, who decides that even though the water isn't going back, he decides that he'll go and be the first person to walk into the water. And as he walks into the water comes up to his ankles, doesn't part, and his knees doesn't part, and his waist, and his chest, and eventually gets just up to his chin and below his mouth, and the water parts. And ever since then, in modern Hebrew, we always ask ourselves the question, Mi ya Nachshon? Who's going to be the first to dare something that seems even uncrossable, like the Red Sea? And of course, the parsha ends with two very important parts of Miriam's beautiful song, from which we have the Mika Mocha prayer, and of course the story of us fighting Amalek. And although it's a story that happened to our people not that far away from where I'm talking to you, a little over 3,250 or so years ago, it's a story that resonates deeply. Why? Because it's our story. And it became our story, and it became a part of who we were by continuing to transmit that story and integrate that story into our daily, weekly, and annual life cycle. Which brings to me where we are right now. In Israel, almost 16 months after October 7th, 2023. Our ancestors survived, and they lived to tell the story. And unfortunately, a lot of people were killed on October 7th and since October 7th, but we have survived. And we continue to live our story. And this week, and last week and the week before, as Israelis are filled with tears in their eyes, tears of joy that a number of the hostages have been returned and have been reunited with their friends and their family. But it's the same tears that we shed that are tears of sorrow and uncertainty for the future and the lives of those remaining 20 of the first 33 hostages who we hope to be released in the coming weeks, and the remaining almost 70 hostages who will still be parts 2 and parts 3 of the ceasefire deal. But I want to share with you stories of two people who have been in the news recently. The first is young Yuval Raphael, a young woman in her early 20s who survived the Nova Festival and lay wounded and pretending to be dead in a protected shelter on that horrible Saturday, October 7th. She survived. And just last week, she won the Israeli contest that will allow her to represent our country in the Eurovision Song Contest in the spring in Europe. And as she said, quote, "I want to tell the story of my country from a place of standing strong, not of seeking pity." And that, in many ways, is what our story is all about, standing strong in spite of what happened not that long ago. The second story is that of the famous singer Idan Amedi, who was critically wounded so badly that the mid-30s man was mistaken for a 22-year-old who they couldn't identify in January of 2024. He's medevaced, he survives, and he writes as soon as he's discharged from the hospital, "The Israeli people are the strongest in the world. When we are united, we are invincible." And just recently he came out with a song called Superman. And he says, quote, I'm no longer afraid of dying. I'm more afraid of not living. And just as our ancestors thousands of years ago recollected the trials and tribulations and the traumas of the exodus from Egypt, yet the optimism for the future, so too are we in the period where we are chronicling the traumas of what happened and what continues to happen, but hopeful for a better future. Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to seeing you soon live in Vancouver.